Value for Value panel. One of the first people I thought of was Kevin Rooke. He's been really covering this. He has a podcast of his own, the Kevin Rooke Show, right? And he's been just covering all this, talking to a bunch of founders, doing some really cool stuff. In particular, it does seem to be more like value for value focused. He came all the way here from Toronto. So big round of applause for that. He's here for this. So thank you so much. And now, I'm just going to back off. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin. By the way, we're streaming this live tonight on a platform called VIDA. So like we can also stream things in podcasting 2.0, you can also stream video and people can check out the video and pay Bitcoin per minute or per message that they send to a platform. And just kind of wanted to preface for that before we get into some of the panels. So I'm handing it over. Thanks, Kevin.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. As Michael alluded to, I've been very excited about Lightning and value for value payments for a little while. How about we start this off with an introduction from you three, and maybe you can share a little bit about your apps that you guys are building and exactly what they do and why you've decided to integrate earning Bitcoin value for value into your business.
Okay, I'm Keyan. I'm building Stacker News, which is like Reddit, only your karma is Bitcoin. We also do this thing, and then we also do this thing where, depending on how good of a user you are, we take any money we earn and we pay you daily for that. And then there's some other things in there like Sybil fees and stuff, but we'll get into that, I assume, later.
Hi, I'm Lyle. I'm building a startup called VIDA. It lets you pay people for their time, and sometimes that time is messages that you send to them. Sometimes it's phone, audio or video calls, or live streams. So, that's the basics.
My name is Justin. I'm the founder of a company called Zion. We're building a social network on top of Bitcoin's Lightning Network.
Awesome. So let's start off, Justin, with a discussion about why we need Bitcoin payments on the internet. What is broken about the internet today, and how do we fix that? We'll start with you and then we'll move through everyone.
I think if you look at how money moves from creators and fans, typically online, on most platforms. So if you look at the one that we think is the best direct support platform out there with Patreon, typically there's 5 or 6 companies that are in between a Patreon transaction and from the fan to the creator. From the credit card company, the credit card hosting company, the website in which the app is on, and then finally the bank, and then finally the creator. So I think the opportunity with native money like Bitcoin, it allows a transaction to directly go to the creator, and it also allows for instant settlement. So even if we look at platforms like OnlyFans, for example, that takes a 30-day window for them to settle that transaction in the end, whereas we have a system now that allows for a finite instant settlement system in a bearer asset, which is Bitcoin. So I think that's just an interesting new paradigm for people to be able to pay the people that they care about the most, and it can bifurcate a lot of the third-party advertising needed on these centralized platforms.
Right. Lyle, I've used Avita a little bit, and I've got some messages, and we've done calls paid in Bitcoin. Why is Bitcoin an important component there? Why can't we just use free messaging?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes down to the final settlement nature of it. As Justin was saying, when somebody has to hold the money for some period of time to make sure that it wasn't fraudulent, it wasn't a stolen credit card, it wasn't any of those things, then you're greatly restricted in what you can build in a value for value product. You just make it generally worse. So Bitcoin and its instant settlement is pretty much the game changer.
Keyan, I know you're using Bitcoin payments for some cyber resistance on Stacker News. Can you talk a little bit more about how that works and why Bitcoin's important?
Yeah, so I think if you look at a lot of digital products, they are common pool resources. So if you're familiar with Bitcoin block space is a common pool resource. And so what a common pool resource is that it you can't exclude people from using it, and it's rivalrous. So if someone gets that spot in the block, then you can't get that spot. And so most digital products have this property. Email relays have this property. Remailers have this property. That's why Hashcash was developed. And so similarly, social media products like Stacker News, where there's a ranking system, there's one home page, you are rivals with other people posting content, and you can overconsume the real estate on the web page. And so you can use Bitcoin to make people pay for the space that they use, and effectively price them out, perhaps, of engaging in bad behavior.
Now, all three apps give you the ability to earn Bitcoin. But if you're earning Bitcoin, that also means, on the other side, someone's spending Bitcoin. How do you get over that hurdle? How do you incentivize people to start spending Bitcoin to give someone the ability to earn? Because that seems like, especially in the Bitcoin community, it's a hard sell. We're taught you want to hold on to Bitcoin forever. You never want to sell it. So how do you build up an app that allows people to earn Bitcoin when it requires someone on the other end to either sell Bitcoin or sell fiat?
One perspective I have is that there's a potential new paradigm for this thing I'm calling like omnidirectional payments. So right now, the typical proxy we have is that, let's say, and I keep going back to OnlyFans, but you have this model where you are paying a creator, but payments can't move in the other direction. So one of the things that we want to do is that every single piece of content is an active opportunity for a payment. So that means a creator does a post, you reply to it with your best feeling of how this helped you and changed your life, someone can pay you for that response. So now your inputs that potentially are valuable on this network within this creators community is also a potential opportunity for a payment. So you can actually earn for being a good person or giving some advice to somebody else or giving someone else some feedback. It's not just a single direction with the payment. It's any direction a creator can be paid and everyone becomes a creator. So there's this incentive that like being a good person or giving some great insight allows you to be compensated as well. And I think that's the interesting paradigm when you build a social and digital product on top of a digital monetary layer. When you build things on money, you can expand the possibilities of the actual system.
Lyle, I know you've had about, I think it's 8 or 10 million sats sent through VIDA. I've been following the dashboard on your site. How do you get people to commit to spending Bitcoin for messages and for calls?
I mean, I think ultimately, spend and replace exists, and ultimately Bitcoin adoption in the payment space is going to be driven by merchants or people demanding Bitcoin for payment. So if you want my value or if you want someone's value on the platform, they're selling their value in Bitcoin, and so they need to demand to be paid in Bitcoin. I think that's one side of the equation, and the other side is that there's new on-ramps and onboarding experiences every day. There's Strike now, that didn't exist 2 or 3 years ago. There's lots of new products and services that are going to let you connect your Bitcoin account, like Swan, for example, to a Lightning wallet to spend. Are you spending Bitcoin, but can you just as easily replace it right after you spend it? I just don't personally think it's a big problem.
Keyan, I know you've got an interesting on-ramp on Stacker News for getting Bitcoin in the hands of users. Can you talk a bit about how that works?
Yeah, so when you join Stacker News, you get 2 free posts and 5 free comments. So it allows you to kind of bootstrap a balance that you can spend from. And presumably there are people, if you're posting good content, presumably there are people who will reward you for that content on the platform. At least that's how it works out usually. And then you can spend from that balance and earn more and more, and maybe you never actually put any outside sats into Stacker News. And we actually, in speaking to like people spending Bitcoin or having a resistance to spending Bitcoin, I actually have users asking me to have other users pay more now. They're actually upset. They understand the common pool resource problem, and they understand that their attention is being grabbed for by people who maybe don't deserve it. And they're asking me to put higher barriers to those people participating. And so I think it's a little more maybe intuitive than people realize, that people understand that that these things will be abused if people don't have to pay for them.
Right.
Particularly Bitcoiners.
Yeah, and there's also another an avenue that you're using with the job board on Stacker News right now, where a job poster can come onto Stacker News and pay for their job listing, and then those sats funnel into users, right? They go back to the users. And I think Fountain does something similar with their app, where advertisers can put fiat money into the system, blast it all out to users watching ads or listening to ads, and users can then earn that way. So I guess there's a number of different kind of on-ramps here. But I think we're going to see a lot more experimentation in this space. One thing I want to understand more about, though, is, we have this tool now that allows anyone to send money anywhere in the world at light speed. And we can do a lot of things with that. And we're starting to see a proliferation of apps being built in the Lightning ecosystem. How do we determine what stuff on the internet should be paid for and what stuff should remain free? Because, it would be a nightmare of an internet if every single transaction, every single second you spent time watching something cost money. So there's got to be a line somewhere of like what should be paid for and what should be free. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I think, first of all, the market should decide ultimately. So there has to be experimentation with entrepreneurs trying different models and see what fails, and we learn from what fails and move forward. So I think it also should be up to the creators. One of the things that we've approached in our design architecture is that the creator can decide if they want an individual post to be a paid post, or they just want it to be as something that they want their community to see. But they decide that and they proxy that because they know their audience better than anyone. Influencers or creators know their audiences better than everyone. So I think, number one, the market must decide, and then let the people that are creating all the content on the internet decide how they want content to be paid for or not to be. That's my perspective on it.
Do you guys have any other thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think the market's going to make that decision, and we can't presume to look into the future and perfectly predict what consumers are going to want to do. But our job as product creators is to lower the barriers as much as possible, give people as much of an opportunity to earn Bitcoin as possible, give people as much of an opportunity to get exposure to Bitcoin as possible, and go where the energy is, go where the users are.
Do you think earning Bitcoin is a gateway to buying Bitcoin? Do you think this is going to be a trend that we see in the next decade or so, where if Bitcoin gets really expensive, people say, I don't want to buy it, it's too expensive, I'll earn it first, I'll hold on to it, I'll watch the balance grow, and then I'll go, oh yeah, you know what, I might buy some.
I mean, I personally think that's already happening. I mean, we've seen a lot of products be successful, like Fold is a good example. You're earning Bitcoin every time you spend your dollars, and that's really appealing. Bitcoin as a reward, as something that you're receiving is really appealing. Now, spending 20 or 30 grand at once is not so appealing for some, but I think we're just seeing the beginning of incentive systems built around Bitcoin being built into products and services. And Keyan and I were just talking about that. I mean, we're just at the very tip.
Keyan, what are your thoughts?
I don't know. I mean, I mostly just end up relaying what users say, but like I had a user say, can you imagine how incredible it'll be later when my Stacker News balance is worth like thousands of dollars? Like 10 years from now, I mean, right now it doesn't seem like I'm earning much. I'm earning like 100,000 sats, or 100,000 sats on Stacker News. Doesn't seem like much, but imagine like 5 years from now, there's a couple halvings or whatever, and that's increased in value, yeah, I could also see that. I mean, I have like a lot of the users on Stacker News, it's their first time using Lightning. Some of them are even new to Bitcoin. So I definitely see it as like some people don't use new technology unless it has utility before maybe they see it as like, a monetary good. And I think applications like ours can probably provide like insight into the utility of Bitcoin.
Do you think we get to a point where there are people who make full-time incomes using some of these value for value apps? Like I know right now you can earn sats by posting on Stacker News, right? Like you know you're earning today maybe thousands of sats a day. Tomorrow maybe 10,000, maybe 100,000. At what point does this start to become meaningful for someone's life? And is this going to become like a micro gig economy? We have the gig economy, right? We got Uber drivers and all that. Airbnb. Are we going to have a micro gig economy built on Lightning?
I think what we'll see the emergence of because of these models is the professional consumer of content. So you'll be someone that is a professional at taking content that you consume, doing edits, re-edits, resharing, sharing some advice, and now you become this professional curator that's actually being paid for. Like content's being paid for. I think that's an emergence of the next layer of the creator economy. The people that follow the creators can now be compensated for the things that they're doing. Because effectively what Bitcoin does, and Lightning in particular, is it makes money very liquid. It allows us to move money in this very fluid way between people at a very quick speed. And it's a new paradigm we haven't really figured out how to use it yet. And then the other ultimate thing is, I mean, look at the internet right now. Like if you have a business that's bringing, I keep going back to this OnlyFans thing, but it's $1 billion business and they're just using credit cards and it's an inefficient system, that 100% should be built on Bitcoin, right? Like a version of that should be built on Bitcoin because it's better, faster, and it's cheaper.
Lyle, if someone's going to be making a full-time income on VIDA, what are they going to be using VIDA for? What will their job be?
I mean, it's multiple things. You know, we're going to have creators on VIDA. We're going to have professionals on VIDA. I mean, I can't predict all of the types of people that are going to monetize their time, their attention on the platform. I'm specifically very interested in, using Bitcoin in the way that Justin and Keyan are talking about, where it creates new incentives to use products and promote products and to participate in a community. So, I mean, you asked me if I think that people will be earning full-time incomes, on Bitcoin using value for value products. I mean, I absolutely do. That's why I'm building the product I'm building. I mean, ultimately, if you have a product, if you have a service, if you have a good that somebody wants, and you're only accepting Bitcoin in exchange for that product, but everybody wants it, I mean, they will pay you. There are ways to convert their dollars into Bitcoin. And so it's really about creating products that people want to use. And VIDA is about giving you the tools to put yourself out there in ways that anyone can consume.
I want to talk about the trade-offs between earning and the experience of using an application, because I get the sense that we have so many apps now that are allowing people to earn for the first time in the Lightning space. I start to wonder, do we enter a race to see which app can get the users paid the most? And is it going to be users showing up and say, oh, this app's going to pay me 10 sats, well, this app's going to pay me 20, this one's going to pay me 50. At some point, you'd think, though, the user experience and the fun of the app has to factor in as well. How do you balance those two and make sure that what you're building can help reward creators, but also is fun and people would be there even if the money wasn't a major role in their lives?
That's a difficult question to answer, but I really like how it's not a race to the bottom, it's like a race to the top. You are spending the most on your users. I think that's kind of insightful. Yeah, I think you do have to create a valuable enough user experience that users would be there anyway. This is one of my problems, or one of my concerns with paying users is, are we creating poor user experiences and then making up for it by paying our users? I think you really have to do both. Otherwise, I think someone will come along and do both. So,
how do you figure out whether or not you are, subsidizing a bad experience with money? What are your ways of determining whether or not you're doing that?
How much you're spending? How much are you spending for how much people are actually using this thing?
Spending unsustainably?
Yeah. Like we're all trying to make businesses, which means we're all trying to make some money. And is there more money going in than coming out?
Right.
It's like, I think that's ultimately, at least that's how I hope to build companies.
Yeah.
There's like shitcoin VCs throwing money at people just to go figure out how to make no money all the time. So I don't know. I built very profitable businesses. That's all I know how to do for the past 12 years.
And how do you design the user experience at Zion to make sure that people are first enjoying the app and then also earning?
It's actually an interesting question because when we launched, we told the market, we're like, hey, you want to join Zion, you're going to pay us every month to be on this app. A lot of motherfuckers didn't do that. It was good for us because we made a lot of cash, but it was one of those things that we said, if you want to use this, you got to run your own node, you have to have your own channel, all these complexities, large barrier to entry. But he said, you got to pay for it. And it was just an experiment. I didn't know. I was running it on my own, and it was my own money. And people actually bought into the model. They said, hey, this is something we want to support because we believe in censorship resistance, we believe in sovereignty. We're growing. We're at a place where we're going to figure out is this how to build an app with scale. But I do believe that users should pay for their experience. I don't think, like, nothing's free in this world, and if you think it is, you're lying to yourself and your kids. Nothing's free. So you have to understand the base fundamentals of how these businesses work. And so we just wanted to build new fundamentals and say, hey, the users can actually pay for something and see if they grow some value from it. But it's still a test. By no means, like, we don't have millions of people using this thing, and we don't know yet.
Right. I think all three apps, you guys are all going through updates and releases, and you're rebuilding the product. Lyle, can you start talking about exactly, what are the barriers to adoption today, and what are you trying to overcome as you think about innovating on the concept of VIDA?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I want anyone to be able to use VIDA. Literally anyone. And the biggest issue is onboarding, people to be able to fund a wallet. I mean, that's the elephant in the room. It's still a problem. It's an ongoing effort, by tens or hundreds of companies, building different products that are going to be one piece of the puzzle that fits into that. But it's a long-term goal and a long-term problem, and we're going to all tackle it day by day. But ultimately, you build products for people to use them, and if you're building a company and the only reason people are using it is because you're giving them money, well, you're not going to have a company very long. So if you want to build for the long term, you have to make sure that the incentives of all the participants in the business, including the customers, are aligned.
Keyan, what are you seeing in terms of barriers limiting adoption today at Stack News?
I don't think I think about it as much as these guys do. I think about mostly, if I can't build a product that Bitcoiners love, using Bitcoin, then I probably can't build a product that other people will love. And so I'm mostly concerned around building a product that Bitcoiners love first, and then I think I'm going to move on to thinking about the onboarding piece. But I tend to really the horizon for me is very short. I think these guys are much more experienced business people, so perhaps I'm doing something wrong. But I'm 6 months away. That's what I think about. Yeah.
You've got something going for you because eventually everybody's a Bitcoiner.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I don't think I can
whether
rely
they
on
like
that.
it or not.
Yeah, I don't think I can rely on that. The company might die before that happens. So I think there's a point to thinking about it before. So,
Justin, what are some of the big barriers that you're trying to overcome with the next release?
I mean, so I think the biggest challenge is we're trying to build something that's never been done before on untested technology. So first of all, nobody uses Bitcoin and Lightning. Let's be honest. There's my estimate in the world is maybe 10,000 people in the entire world use this stuff. Very small subset of people. So we have, let's just be honest with each other. Everyone thinks oh, Bitcoin's taking over the world. Not yet, not even close. So there's a very small subset of people building on this stuff. And then the way that we're trying to build these technical patterns, if you looked at our last blog post, we're trying to build this Web 5 architecture that Jack Dorsey released and their whole team at Block. this stuff is super untested, and engineers have a hard time trying to build stuff that's never been built before. Generally, they're a pain in the ass. So trying to like describe to them like, hey, this is how it should work and we should try this out, that's probably one of my biggest challenges. And then Bitcoin has, you know, it's got this energy behind it that yes, people love Bitcoin, but there isn't really a story yet of why do you use Bitcoin, right? Like no one, like I get the maxis, we all talk about it in a way that like, oh, it's obvious, but it's not obvious to the entire world yet. And this is a bit of a controversial thing to say, but I think Bitcoin needs its Bretton Woods agreement. I think it needs something, and if you guys don't know what the proxy of Bretton Woods was when the fiat dollar got pegged to oil, and everyone that needed to buy oil had to use the dollar to do that, and that's where the dollar became the world's reserve currency. I think Bitcoin needs a moment like that, where people, and we're talking about it up here, like everyone has to use Bitcoin for this thing. There has to be this actual utility value for it. I think that's the way that it's going to increase trajectory, and it's hard to build on. This stuff is not easy, and like nobody's really using it yet.
If you had to guess, what will that moment be?
I'd like us to be the killer Bitcoin use case, obviously, because I'm spending all my life force energy on it. I have this feeling that it will be because influential people want to use it, but I don't know. It could be his, could be any of ours. I don't know.
Electricity.
I don't know what that means.
Could be paying for electricity.
Yeah.
Electricity and Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think, you know, ultimately, you know, you have to start from the ground up, and it's like, you know, what can you do with Bitcoin money that you can't do with debt money? And that is that you can settle it instantly. You can settle it instantly. That is the difference, and that's the difference that Lightning makes. There's a lot of, you know, technical problems that solves, you know, that you literally cannot do with debt-based money. And so, you know, there's an interesting quote. I guess it was Jeff Booth. I was watching an interview he did the other day, and he said something like, Bitcoin over Lightning is the first money that isn't bound by money velocity. And the reason is because it settles instantly. There's no time lag, so you can move it, you know, 1 million times in a handful of seconds if you want to. And that fundamentally changes things, and we're still all collectively, you know, sifting through businesses in the world to figure out where that solves problems. My personal opinion is that telecom, real-time media, it's a perfect fit. That's why I'm investing there.
Right, yeah, it's like the instant settlement, and also then the ability to do these super small transaction sizes that you can't be supported on credit cards or other fiat networks. I think one really interesting you know, thing to think about is that today we may have a very small number of people using Lightning, but we have about 100 million people in the world with access to Lightning on the apps already on their phone. The biggest source of that being Cash App with 70 plus million users, but we got Paxful and Kraken and a bunch of others. Robinhood's planning to integrate it. So it does kind of feel like we're waiting for the killer app to show up, and when it does, it's like we have all the tinder ready to go. You know, we're pouring oil on the fire, and we get one match, and I think there's a real case to be made for like an app that quickly gets up to, you know, 10 million users, because we have all these people who have Lightning access, haven't realized it yet, don't really care about it yet, but in the right context, it might be really easy for them to switch over and go, oh, this makes sense. I want to ask you guys all about, you know, the way users are using your apps today. What has surprised you guys the most? Maybe we could go through, start with you, Justin.
The number of communities people want to start, that was very surprising. Like we had, you know, with only about 2,700 creators, they created over 1,400 communities, so that was a big surprise. Like I didn't think that people actually wanted to create their own destinations on the web. I thought they just wanted to follow the most influential people. That was a big surprise. And then just transaction volume. I mean, we did 120,000 transactions in the first 6 months of the business. I didn't even think people wanted to give each other sats. Like I didn't know. Like I didn't think it was going to be a thing. It's a thing. People want to do it. So the question becomes in our like next version that we're trying to launch in October, how can we accelerate that transaction volume? How can we build a system that makes it much faster to transact and send money quicker with just user actions inside the UI UX. Those are two things that surprised me.
What was the most surprising thing for you, Lyle?
Honestly, I think it's been the amount of sort of business development messaging traffic. So like, sending messages has been by far and away the most popular thing so far. Not so many video calls, a good amount of streams.
I FaceTime you once.
Yeah, I was like on a run.
It was like 10 sats a minute. I was like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
It was great.
But it's kind of surprising. Like I'll see messaging traffic and like look at user stats that have received messages and just reach out to them and be like, well, what are people messaging you about? And a lot of times it's like, oh, well, they work in Bitcoin and I wanted to see if I could set up a call with them, to talk to them about XYZ. It's a totally reasonable use case, for monetizing your time, and it seems to be what people want to do.
So do you think this is going to be big for like consultants and people paid by the hour? Is that going to be?
Yeah, I mean, imagine like you're some dude that works in some software enterprise like, let's say Cisco. And you're like a mid-level exec and you get people trying to sell you shit all the time, right? 24/7, you're getting emails, you're getting phone calls, you're getting all this stuff. And I sell software, and I'm trying to target this person in Cisco with my software so that he'll buy my software. So what are my options? I can try to get his email address and target him with like LinkedIn ads, and spend maybe $2,000 or $3,000, and maybe he clicks them and reaches out. I can do the same thing on Facebook. I can cold call him and annoy him, or if he's got a VIDA account and he's set a price for his time, maybe it's $500 an hour to talk on the phone. But somebody can call him immediately and get his attention with 100% certainty and know for sure if he's going to buy the product or not. And it's way more efficient than hoping that somebody clicks an ad.
Question on that: Does the company get the $500 or does he personally?
In this case, he personally. But we have had quite a few people that said, well, what if I wanted to set up a company account where like my employees have VIDA accounts and then they're getting a split and the company's getting a split or something like that. So it's an idea we're exploring, kind of like split payments on the Fountain app, honestly.
Right. Keyan, what's been the most surprising thing for you seeing Stacker News grow?
I think that there isn't a lot of resistance to as much resistance to spending when people are earning. I mean, this isn't like a huge like economic insight, I guess, because it's exactly how most B2B companies make money. Is they allow people to make more money using their product than they would if they hadn't, so they can charge, that margin. Yeah, and so I think that's kind of it. Is that these are microeconomies. They're still economies. All the incentives are the same. They're just tinier. Or at least Stacker News is tinier, and so the same rules kind of apply.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of like if you spend a couple of years printing a lot of money and airdropping it to everyone in the world, they're going to spend it, right?
Yeah.
If you give people money, they'll figure out a way to use it.
For sure.
I want to finish off with one last question. If we zoom out here and think about the impact that earning Bitcoin and slinging Bitcoin along the Lightning Network is going to have on the world, what do you think this does to existing internet business models, and how do we make this transition from where we are today, where it's just a niche group of people building on Lightning and building on Bitcoin, to a time where there's billions of people using this? What happens along that way to the existing business models that rule the internet today?
They get destroyed, hopefully. I think that, like all cycles, there has to be hopefully a new breed. What I'm hopeful for, I think some of the smartest people in the world that I know have entered the general category that we're in, which is decentralizing money. I think the opportunity also is we're getting to an age of that peer-to-peer economics matter. I think ultimately all this stuff, if you look at NFTs, if you look at crypto, whatever, and then Bitcoin, it's a journey in peer-to-peer value exchange. It's like I can give you something and I can do it across the web and it could be instant. I think that to me is a really interesting new incentive that takes out the arbiter. we've entered, since the iPhone, we've entered the age of decentralization, and we've moved outside the century of centralization that started with FDR, and all of these are the elements of it. So now, some of these companies that are ruling had come in at the end of the centralized era, or has just been started at the beginning of the decentralized era. So Facebook got started at the last cycle of the centralized era, and now we've entered this new decentralized cycle. So I think decentralized apps will hopefully rule for the next 100 years in this cycle, and then there'll be something else that comes back. But I think it requires the ultimate demise of these other systems. We need to destroy them, and all we can do.
Lyle,
and not be unapologetic about it.
Lyle, in the telecom industry, who gets disrupted first, and how does that unfold?
Yeah, I mean, just to step back for a second and think broadly. I mean, I think it's a pendulum. I don't think ad-based businesses, and traditional businesses are going to disappear, but the pendulum's definitely going to swing. Right now, ad-based businesses are ridiculously, too big. Why is Facebook able to generate so much revenue leeching your attention? Do business models like that disappear? Probably not. Does more shift into real-time value settlement, giving people value for the value that they produce? Yeah, I absolutely do think that it does. But to get to your point on telecom, telecom settlement is a $40 billion a year business globally, and it's terrible. It's really, really bad. Trust me.
What is telecom settlement for?
Let's imagine, you're calling a phone number, you're in Japan, and you need to make somebody's phone ring in the United States. That call goes through about 8 different intermediaries that all have 60-day settlement periods between one another. And it's all built on trust, because they don't trust that you will pay them. Because, a traditional phone call is a form of value transfer because it actually costs money, and on the other end, somebody might be paid for that phone call. Think like, high cost area codes in like Utah, or whatever, right? So it's a really big industry. I think Lightning's absolutely going to change it. Everything we're building behind the scenes is also applicable to telecom settlement. If you do a video call on VIDA, it's actually a SIP call behind the scenes, which is interoperable with any telecom network in the world. So, I definitely think it's going to go there. It's going to take some time, though.
Keyan, what do you think if Stacker News gets to millions or billions of users, what does that do to Reddit, Hacker News, similar forums? Do they also jump in and adopt Lightning? How does that all unfold?
I don't really know. I think maybe they adapt and change. I think it does. There will be perhaps like a younger generation of user, or perhaps a user who doesn't want their privacy taken from them to get a product for free. Maybe they appreciate this new paradigm, or maybe they appreciate getting paid for instead of getting effectively like stolen from. Again, maybe it's like hard to quantify how much your privacy is stolen, but getting stolen from. I don't really know, but I suspect things change, and so that's about as much as I'm confident to say.
Awesome. How about we open it up for some listener questions?
Just in general for all of your products, what do you see as like the next vertical you're tackling, or like the biggest problem you're trying to solve next, like your product roadmap?
I'll go. For me, for VIDA, it's about getting your VIDA page in front of more people, right? Like if you have a VIDA account, but no one ever sees it, then no one's ever going to use it, right? So it's about expanding the net of how to get that product in front of more people. It's going to be more of things like the Twitter integration we have today, which automatically responds to your DMs and says, hey, I don't follow you, I don't often check this inbox, message me here. And we're going to do that on LinkedIn and on Instagram and on any of those other sites. We're rolling out a link page functionality, kind of like a link tree. I don't know if you know what that is, but your VIDA page will be a link page that you use for anything. So anybody that lands on your link page has an opportunity to contact you. So it's going to be a lot of stuff like that.
Mine is mostly like maintaining quality like kind discourse at scale. That's probably the biggest challenge I see. Most platforms, as they get larger, people get like kind of vitriolic. You get more and more trolls in them. And one of the comments I've received from people is people are kind of good-natured and everyone's very friendly and very helpful on Stacker News. And I'm kind of cautiously optimistic about the future being able to maintain that, but I think I need to do a lot of work to make sure that happens.
I think for me, it's servicing our investor base. So our investors are pretty influential people in the world, and they need to build their communities online. Some of them are being censored currently, and I think there needed to be a place where people can go and feel free about what they want to share. And then a stretch goal that I have is one of the way our logins are going to work for Zion is going to be these things called DIDs. They're decentralized identifiers. And we use a proxy called DidIon to write identities to the Bitcoin blockchain. And my stretch goal for the end of the year is to have 250,000 DIDs written in a hash to the Bitcoin blockchain.
Just to follow up on the DID stuff, are you seeing from what I've heard so far, like everyone that's doing DID stuff is just doing ION? Is that like the default?
Well, first of all, no one's doing it really yet. So nobody's using this shit again. Like it's stuff that nobody uses yet, but this is the hope. W3C did just accept a DID as a form of identifier on the webs to standardize that. So I think that we will see in the next few years if this thing takes off or not. I think, like personally, it makes sense to me that you have a persistent identity over multiple application stacks, right? Facebook tried to do that. That's why there's like login with Facebook everywhere. Is like everyone had a Facebook account, so now use Facebook login to go into these different applications. I think the next iteration, like I talked about, the decentralizing of the century, will be that you now own your ID with a private key, and now that persistent identity can log you into any single application. So I'm hopeful that that's the way the future goes, because I think the zeitgeist is around decentralization. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. Thanks, buddy. Thanks for that question.
Any other listener questions?
It's a little tangential, but I was thinking, like the miners have done a lot of lobbying in Congress, and we've done a lot of education for politicians, local, state, federal, about Bitcoin in general. But I don't think we have on Lightning. And do you guys think about a need to get these politicians to understand how big of an economic driver this will be and how important it is to not F it up in America, whether it's state or federal? Specifically thinking about KYC being too low of a barrier. You know, I want to be able to send maybe multiple hundreds of dollars in a Lightning transaction with KYC. I think you need that for the Lightning network. Maybe, I don't know what the threshold is, but there's probably a sweet spot that allows Lightning to actually become the internet of money. And if you push too much regulation, maybe we can't get there, or we get there 20 years slower. And I don't think any of us want that right now. So.
I guess I don't know what regulations are out there that's stopping adoption, right? Like I don't think this is a regulatory issue. I think it's a issue with the way that we are presenting this product technically to the world. I think that's the problem. I don't think it's like the government. I don't think the government is stopping Lightning adoption globally. I think it's like the companies just have to do a better job of marketing these products to customers for them to understand it. That's just my personal belief. I think Bitcoin companies generally, I don't think we do a great job of speaking to the masses properly. So I kind of disagree that it's a function that some senator in DC is preventing the growth of the Lightning Network. No, I just think we're doing a bad job at really building good consumer apps for adoption. My personal belief, I get it's not probably the answer you wanted, but that's what I think is happening. Yeah, thanks, Matt. Good question.
I'll take the opposite side of that, because I think there's a lot of work we can do to bring clarity to like what you have. Do you have to record capital gains taxes when you send someone 10 cents? It's like today, yeah, you kind of do. Like if someone comes asking for it, you know, you're liable. We don't have any rules in place, and I think we could do with some rules that allow for, I think there was a bill in the US that maybe $200 or $600. If it's anything under that, don't even worry about capital gains tax. I think something like that would do a lot for people who may otherwise not want to spend Bitcoin, just because it's a headache of then now I got to account for the 12 cents I sent my favorite
Yeah, but
creator
is that
last month.
true? I mean, so we have W-9 functions in the U.S. Is it true that if you send someone 10 cents, you have to report that to the government? Where is that?
I think it's the
Where
thing
is that law? I mean, I run a company. It's not a law, so that's not
it's
true.
the sentiment that if people are going to have to take care of this stuff, like you have to take care of your bigger
Not under
transactions.
$600. So why does it matter?
But that's not in place today.
Of course it's in place today. It's a W-9 law that every company uses. Isn't
That's not true in Canada.
Yo,
it's not true all
God, don't
over the
talk. I
world.
mean, this is the United States of America, not fucking Canada.
We got
Sorry.
lightning's global.
I mean,
No, I get it. I'm talking shit.
Do
sorry.
I wish that the government would get out of the way and not have rules about people having private transactions between one another? I mean, absolutely. I mean, that's why I'm a Bitcoiner. I mean, but ultimately, I think that we win by making tools that are useful that people want to use, just like Justin was saying. And that applies to customers of a business. It also applies eventually to politicians writing laws. And I guess my opinion is, if every I don't know, I'll use telecom as an example. If every telecom company in the United States depended on Lightning for their settlement, the government would get out of the way.
Exactly.
because the government is paid by people that run businesses.
Of course.
I mean, ultimately,
that's what I'm
so
echoing.
Yeah, I mean, I generally agree. Is it problematic? Are rules that are in place today problematic? Does it disincentivize certain users from spending Bitcoin? I mean, maybe. Does it create pain and disincentivize innovation? Absolutely. But it's better to ask forgiveness than permission.
Fair enough. Any other listener questions?
So I get the idea of sort of building a killer app and that being a way to bring a bunch of people onto Lightning, but maybe for a more short-term standpoint, from like a user acquisition standpoint, how do you sort of cross the chasm between just having a big network of Bitcoiners talking about Bitcoin things to sort of having people talking about all sorts of things and that being their introduction to Bitcoin and Lightning?
I don't know. I think for Stacker News, my hope is that when we give Stacker News users the ability to create their own sub-communities, that they bring in their own interests, because Bitcoiners aren't only into Bitcoin, and they bring their friends in and say, hey, join my community. It has better incentives than you'd find on Reddit. The content is better. You can get paid for your content. Maybe you don't appreciate Bitcoin now, but I'm your friend and I appreciate it, and you trust me and my judgment about what's valuable. I don't know. I tend to not think that far ahead.
This was something that was brought up in the value for value discussion before. That the importance of having an RSS feed for podcasts is that take Fountain for an example. They start their app on day one. They have a library of 5 million podcasts, and everyone can participate now. And anyone using Fountain can access all of these shows. And now I was talking with Oscar at Fountain a while ago. And he's starting to see people who are not Bitcoiners starting to use some of the features in Fountain and starting to ask for, have their audience send in sats and teach them about what sats are. So they can kind of approach it from a different angle because the RSS feed is already an open standard. So I think there's going to be some ways that we can kind of introduce people to Bitcoin, using networks that already exist.
I'll tell you my strategy. So I went and raised a funding round a couple months ago, and I decided to go find very influential people on the internet that had probably have nothing to do with Bitcoin and ask them to give me money to teach them about Bitcoin and to invest in the company. So people like Tony Robbins, Aubrey Marcus, Aaron Rodgers from the NFL, Griffin Johnson, these are people that have massive social audiences that don't know a lot about Bitcoin. My strategy is to go get those people, get them involved with Zion, and then talk about this product. And this is outside of the Bitcoin space. Because I think it's a given you're going to get Bitcoiners. Of course, oh, cool, Lightning app, of course I want it, I'll talk about it. But the key is the critical mass outside of this community and people that are interesting. That's the only way you win. That's why I said 10,000 people use this stuff. It's nothing. It's nothing. It's not compared to anything about what's out there. So that's my strategy for the mainstream, personally.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about, continually, every single day, eliminating adoption barriers to our products. And, like I said earlier, for me, that is like the onboarding experience. I want to show users why Lightning is better and not, A, assume that they already understand, or B, have to teach them. Like I want to show them. That will probably involve me offering other ways to onboard onto the platform that ultimately ends in the creators, the people on the platform being paid for their time to receive Bitcoin. But maybe I take Apple Pay to onboard and convert it for them on the fly. Does that mean I'm going to have to jump through a lot of hoops, to do that from, potentially a regulatory perspective? Maybe, but my goal is to enable as many people as possible to earn Bitcoin.
I think MoonPay is doing that. I think you could use a credit card to buy Bitcoin.
There's a few options out there these days.
Anyone else?
First of all, hey everybody, I'm Dave. Go by Reverend Hoddle on Twitter.
Hi, Dave.
Hey, I'm visiting from Vancouver. No, I've escaped Vancouver, Canada. So glad to be here. Question to the panel: open source clearly has created a space where, if I'm a coder and I publish to GitHub, a million people can contribute and make that code better. Did they get paid? I don't know. Linus Torvald, historians, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he build something and then he put it to the world? It changed the world. It allowed us to understand open source. So what I'm getting at is, with content, should we not make the best content rise to the top? And for Zion, listen, thank you for what you're doing. I'm going to take one exception of what you say. I don't believe that content should be paid. I believe good content should be paid. Just because you build it doesn't mean you should get money for it. There's a great article, if anybody follows GG on Twitter, what this guy said is bang on the money, okay? Guess what content doesn't get out in front? First of all, let me rephrase. If it's good, it's going to get hacked. Why? Because it's good. Great music, great movies, etc. get hacked. The shittiest content is behind a paywall because no one wants it. And I mean, no disrespect. So shouldn't we be using the very best that we can create for ourselves to drive your applications and more? So the question to the panel is, how do you draw in the best creators, the best content writers, musicians, you name it? This fellow here was talking about music. I think this is where we got to go. We got to raise the bar. We got to start using these platforms to really put this in front of people. And guess what happens? People gravitate to the space where the best stuff is. I don't go listen to the shitty musician on the street. I listen to the person that's laying it down, and I'll throw money in their guitar case. I don't have a contract. I have nothing apart from a social agreement that I want you to do this. I want you to do more of this, and here's my money. And I think 20% of the market will do that. So could you build your business on that sort of a pretense? And again, without loading a question for you, I appreciate all you're doing, but how do we get there? How do we raise that bar?
I mean, ultimately, that's what value for value is. I mean, value for value is about people valuing other people's work and time, right? So if somebody is not providing valuable work, content, in lots of cases like this, well, they're not going to make any money. I mean, we're not changing how markets work.
Yeah.
We will not change that. Markets are markets. Like, they're going to continue to work whether we like it or not. A lot of the way the market works today doesn't give a shit about Bitcoin or Lightning, and it's because we haven't created products and services that people want to use. And so, I think that if we make the products and services that people want to use, then we're going to get the good content. We're going to get the good people that are talented and want to sell their time and efforts for Bitcoin.
It is a really good question, though. Like, there's a line from Stuart Brand that I like. He talked about, this is back I think in the 80s, he said, information wants to be free because the cost of producing it trends towards zero, but it also wants to be expensive because the right bit of information at the right time can totally change your life. It can change your world, right? And so how do you deal with this tension of the two back and forth, like what should be free and what should not be free? And that's, I think, an unanswered question at this point. I think we have a lot of tools now we can use to incentivize people to find good information and pay for good information. One thing you're doing at Stacker News is if you're one of the first people to upload a good piece of content, you could get a reward that next day coming from the job board, right? So that's like, I think of that as like an incentive for people to search out for good information and pay for it. But I think we're going to come up with more of these strategies to make it so that the great stuff gets paid for and the not so great stuff doesn't.
Yeah, I think one of the proxies is that the market is the market. The market will decide if you're good or you're not. And the second thing is the new paradigm is every digital product can now inherently have a native wallet, and that allows for some really interesting features. Like what if Facebook had native money? What if Instagram had native money? What if YouTube had a wallet attached to it? Like what if all these things, these great products that we use today had money tied to it? It allows for the free market to actually decide who is the best and who's not the best, but do it through a monetary lens, not through an intention lens.
Anyone else? Or any other questions?
You started out saying, like, how do we get creators on these platforms? And as far as I understand, creators they either want people, like an audience, like they want their ideas to spread, or they want to get paid. And most of them probably want both. And so I think if we want more creators on our platforms, then we have to guarantee them both reach and the ability to make money. And I think most of these platforms don't allow people to make money, so we at least have that advantage. It's like natively built into our platforms. So I think we need to focus maybe on the reach part.
Yeah, the reach part, I think, just to echo what you're saying, the thing I guarantee a creator is that you actually own your audience for the first time. The difference on Instagram, my analogy I use, and I've used it so many times, is creators have built mansions in other people's backyards with no rental agreement. That's effectively what every social network is. But we allow for you to own it. Like, of course you own it. Here's your persistent identity no matter where you go, and your followers can follow you along. So I don't know. I hope that's helpful, Reverend.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, like, if your mom wanted you to do a chore and you did it, and she wanted to pay you money without setting up a Bitcoin wallet. Like Rezvani, she can just, or fiat currency, she can just give it to you without, setting up a bank account or something. How could she give it to you without setting up a Bitcoin wallet?
What a remarkable question. What's your name?
Annie?
Annie, that was an incredible question. Thank you so much for asking that. Thank you so much.
I mean, we have Jack Mallers to thank for the solution to that problem. Tell your mom to install Strike, I think, is the answer.
But I think she has a good question. She says, how can she exchange value without setting up a wallet? I don't have an answer. I'll be honest with you. I don't know.
Open dime.
There's these new things. I mean, I don't know how new these things are, but there's these little flash drives that people give out. They give them out here all the time, where you can put a certain amount of Bitcoin on this little flash drive, and your mom can physically hand you this flash drive, and now you have whatever's on that flash drive. So I think that might be a potential solution to this fiat exchange problem. I think the company's called Open Dime. I think that's what the name of the little device is, but maybe your mom can do it that way. But that was a very good question. Thank you so much.
And hopefully one day we'll have all the other apps that are on your phone already. They may start to integrate Lightning Network payments, right? We have Cash App now. A lot of people in this room probably have Cash App on their phone. That now has Lightning integrated. I think over time we'll see more apps where it makes sense start to integrate Lightning, and then all of a sudden it won't just be the pure Lightning wallets. It'll be all the apps you use on your phone where you can exchange money seamlessly.
Someone is also making Bitcoin paper money. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they're making like very high quality like Bitcoin notes. I don't know, I forget how they work, but I think it might be like a Lightning withdrawal code on them or something. But so that would be a solution to this problem.
How do they last for a long time?
I think they're like the quality, they're like very high quality paper. Like,
No, but how does the invoice last longer than 24 hours?
It's a LNURL withdrawal, so it relies on the mother having a wallet that's capable of doing LNURL, and the idea, and her wallet persisting into the future, I would assume. I might be butchering the idea, and it might be much more robust than this. So, but there's someone working on like a paper equivalent to Bitcoin.
Cool. Does anybody else have a question?
All right, I think we'll wrap it up here. Thanks everyone for tuning in.
I love it. Keyan, dude, thank you so much.